Dr. Elise, you are the host now. You can share your screen. You can start your speech, share the screen, and manage the process.
Thank you. Hello again, everybody. I'm Elise. Just briefly introduce myself. I am interior architect and I work as a full-time faculty member in the Department of Interior, Interior Architecture at Eastern Mediterranean University. And basically, I would like to start our session, Architecture and Technology Aid Space Studies. In this session, we will cover architectural space from various different standing points. And we will cover the importance of the space to the building design, as well as the role of interior spaces that greatly affect the usability, comfort, as well as aesthetic appeal. And through this valuable presentation, we will try to highlight once more the space as an essential hallmark that determines how we work, how we live, and how we engage with the built environment. And as the co-chair of this session, we have Associate Professor Dr. Archana Bagel from Anant University in India. We also have Professor Dr. Özkal Barış Öztürk from Mimar Sinan Güzel Sanatlar University, but I'm not sure if he's here. So I would like to give the word to the Associate Professor Dr. Archana Bagel if she would like to add something before we start our session.
Hi, we can start the session. You've covered most of the thing.
Okay, thank you. Before starting the presentation, I will briefly tell about these 5 presentations that we will have in total. First presentation will be my presentation entitled as Rethinking Theories in Interior Design, a Critical Exploration. Then second presentation called A Critical Inquiry of Material Aging in Interior Architecture will be presented by Saumya Kimesara and Professor Amal Shah from SEP University, Faculty of Interior Design, India. And then third presentation, presenting a design method that begins with space and ends with building, will be presented by Asil Youssef Zuregat, Jehan Diab, and Dima Al-Shahin from Department of Architecture, American University of Madaba, Jordan. Fourth presentation, called Evolution of Medieval Romanesque and Design to Gothic Architecture, Recourse to Darwin's Theory, will be presented by Fasi Olegbenga Stefan, Hurash Ahmed Nia, Omaya Jova, and Ukudasi. They are from Federal University of Technology, Akure, and Alanya University, Turkey. And last but not least, final presentation, Reimagining Animal Shelter Design, Fostering Holistic Welfare in Northern Cyprus and Beyond, will be presented by PhD candidate Laden Tarhun, Assistant Professor Dr. Salah Muhaddin from Girne American University, and Assistant Professor Dr. Ahenk Yıldırım Damgacı from Eastern Mediterranean University, North Cyprus. I will start the presentations. Hello everyone, I am Elise, and in today's presentation entitled Rethinking Theories in Interior Design, a Critical Exploration, I will try to reflect the use and the application of theories in the field of interior design. So to start with, interior design is a considerably young discipline in the scholarly research of design, and it extends knowledge to understand the interactions between people and interior space. Historically, the discipline has been interpreted as the extension of the other disciplines and somehow has blurred boundaries with architecture, arts, and design, which also creates a kind of a contested territory and complex nature of research for the discipline itself. Some of the scholars like Hollis describe the discipline as acting slippery, difficult to define, having both strengths of being interdisciplinary, on the contrary, causing some frustrations due to inability to define disciplines which gives discipline a kind of a freedom and expansiveness, whereas on the other hand, there are calls to have more bounded, tighter definitions to establish the discipline as more serious profession in the field. So the aim of the research was to review and explore the application of theory in the scholarly research of interior design and indicate whether theory buildings specific to the discipline exist or not. And to review the use of theory in interior design, basically this study extends on the works of some of the scholars like Thompson, Hewlett, Clemens, and Ekman, which explored the published works until 2016. And here I focused on the latest body of the knowledge by exploring the scientific articles of some of the selected journals until 2023. In terms of the methodology, the research is developed based on the content analysis technique and includes the systematic review of these theory-based articles. In terms of the taken steps, first step was the selection of the academic journals. So these journals had to be peer-reviewed, solely focused on the interior design discipline, and there were 4 of them. One of them was the Journal of Interior Design. It's the oldest scientific journal in the field. Another early established journal, IDEA, and another youngest, relatively new journal, Interior Design, Architecture and Culture, and the youngest journal in the field, the Journal of Interior Design and Academy, are reviewed as the credible sources for the discipline. And in the second phase, I defined particular keywords that acted as the filtering mechanism to what include and what to exclude in this review. And the third step was reviewing of these articles, where I developed particular subthemes and defined the application of theories specific to the interior design. So based on this analysis, I've come up with 6 subthemes. In total, 94 articles were reviewed, and only 23 articles are observed to be theory-based. So the first subtheme was the creativity, and in this one, scholars applied creative methodologies, research techniques, and models to explore interior space and its spatial experience. Second one was the material culture, focusing on the materiality and basically non-human agency and the role of the objects in deriving meaning to the interior spaces. Thirdly, technology. This one was the machine learning processes, the role of the digital world, another AI tracking technologies that help to determine the interior behaviors. And another one was the design, where the scholars used varied theories to understand spatial organizations, design guidelines, as well as providing new thinking about the interior spaces. Fifth one was the learning. Here, learning methods, models, pedagogies, ability tests are provided by the researchers, both for the students and the practitioners. And last one was the environment and behavior, focusing on the experience models, perception, movement mapping, etc., where they were trying to identify the creation of positive experiences within the interiors. So the category of design observed to be most cited theoretical framework, followed by environmental behavior, creativity, learning, while material, culture, and the technology were the least cited subcategories. And the majority of these theories can be identified as being adopted from other disciplines, majorly from psychology, anthropology, pedagogy, and the philosophy. For instance, one theory, which was oblique function theory, belongs to the discipline of architecture. And another theory called the plastic number theory is combination of mathematics and art, or the productive factor theory finds its roots in the field of economics. As 23 out of 94 articles explicitly use theory, 31 articles also refer to particular concepts, but they did not really apply these concepts as the theoretical frameworks. So they were only referred in the literature sections. So here you can see some of the list of these concepts. So they were mentioned concepts, they were cited in isolation within the context, somehow attributing a sandwich approach, cited at the beginning, then referenced at the end, but did not necessarily used to guide the design in overall. So, based on this systematic analysis of the selected journals, findings reveal that variety theories are adopted from other disciplines help to create interdisciplinary knowledge base for interior design. And drawing theories from a wide array of disciplines illustrated also the lack of established theories being unique to the interior design discipline. Having enriched yet deficit of century-centric literature exemplifies the importance of embracing the marginality of the interior to break away from other disciplines. So therefore, the creative endeavor of researchers and the utilization of specialized theories are needed to enhance the promising future of the discipline. Still, the analysis of these frameworks are promising for the future development of the body of knowledge, especially the gap in the theory development specific to the interior design can be potentially filled with the phenomenon of interiority, which highly appears in the recent studies in the discipline. So this ongoing fascination with the interiority helps to build on new scholarship and explores the interior not necessarily being limited within the physical boundaries, yet acting transient, urban, or interdisciplinary. So to sum up, within the parameters of this study, regardless of the limited number of theory-based studies, the infancy of the established theories in interior design, contemporary research is promising for the future of the discipline. Yet, it is clear that further theoretical developments are required in the advancement of the interior discipline. That was the end of the presentation. Thank you for listening. Okay. Sorry. Now we will move on to the second presentation. A critical inquiry of material aging in interior architecture by Soumya Kimesari and Professor Amal Shah from CEP University, Faculty of Interior Design, India.
And alongside University Creator, Professor Amal Shah, I'm excited to present our research project titled A Critical Inquiry of Material Aging in Interior Architecture. Let's have a look at the life of a material. We see that a new material over time decays, changes its properties, and shows the traits of aging or weathering, with change in its quality and thus gets old. This old material now is in a position to either become valuable The aim of this research is to examine the strategy of aging and weathering materials in the field of interior architecture for specifically adaptive reuse environments. This research is divided into 4 parts. The first one talks about the theory of aging and weathering, its evidences and impacts. Second part details the visible and invisible evidence of aging and weathering, decay, and time respectively. The third part talks about the values and design approaches of adaptive reuse, including the key value drivers of the approaches. The last part details one of the approaches, ruination, and its practical application in the field of interior architecture. This study is a response to human emotions, thus blends the two fields, psychology and interior architecture, in order to design spaces which are more emotionally resonating, more user-centric, aesthetically appealing, and sustainable, keeping in mind the future. What is aging? The most basic definition of aging is growing old, be it a living being or a material. For a material, the theoretical causes for the same include corrosion, wear and tear, oxidation, and exposure to the environment. Then what is the difference between aging and weathering? Weathering specifically refers to the process of external environmental factors causing physical and chemical changes at the surface level of the material. External environmental factors being the key, the surface changes are seen when light, wind, rain, or temperature changes act on the materials. When we talk about evidence for aging and weathering, there exists 2 kinds, visible and invisible. Decay, being the visible evidence, can contribute to a sense of authenticity and add to the overall aesthetic appeal of the design. And the invisible evidence, being time, is only felt. Let's talk about decay first. The word by itself holds a negative connotation, as it literally means cause of rotting or decomposing. Even in societal terms, it holds negatives, as it trails towards decline in quality. For example, how someone claims their culture to be decaying in the younger generations. However, in the field of interior architecture, decay doesn't necessarily have to mean something negative. This is where the aging and weathering of material act as a benefit to defy this negative notion. This could be done through enhancing the very decay of materials. Decay enhancement could be done through certain ways. One of them is through emphasizing the patina of the material. As seen in the Alembic Museum, Vadodara, a city in India, the old factory was repurposed where certain parts of the building were kept as is to enhance the history of the space. The other way of doing so is by using reclaimed materials in the built form. This is seen in the Courage House by Studio S+PS, where they have used old reclaimed materials in the living area of a house, which opens to the front facade, keeping all the windows functional as well. There are 3 ways in which one may interpret different meanings of decay: in nature, in society, and in materials. Ultimately, all the decay happens or is visible should be decay in the material itself. Material decay may be classified into 2 types. Incidental is when material is naturally decaying due to environmental factors, while curated decay is the process where decay is made a deliberate feature in the design. Talking about the conceptual evidence of aging and weathering, time is the key to both measured duration and cultural and historical significance. Time is also a key to designing a space, as it decides the lifespan of each and every building material of the space. Time causes temporality, a concept which intends to experiment with the representation of time. As we talked about earlier, time gives importance to history, emotions, and culture, thus amplifying the value of the material or the built form. Coming to the third part of the research, as we talked about value, we need to understand the perception of values. Creation deals with designing the space according to the needs and aesthetics, while enhancement is the improvisation on the already existing space. Here, we only deal with the value enhancement part as we talk about adaptation. In the book Heritage of Built Forms talks about 3 design approaches of adaptation: amulatio, facadism, and ruination. This project details out only the ruination approach. Ruination is the approach which respects the aged and weathered building and lets the old deteriorate over time as a part of the design. A good example is the San Fernando Library, which was once a school, then a cinema, then a theater, and now a library. With all these repurposing of the space, the original stone shell of the building has remained untouched. For such adaptation projects, there are certain key drivers which enhance the value of those spaces. From these, ruination holds four major drivers: time, as it talks about ruins; sustainability, as that much amount of new material is saved; aesthetics, as it is different than the contemporary; and history and emotive value, as it holds a rich past. But is there a need for value enhancement? As humans, our responses are a reflection of our emotions, and aging and weathering of interior materials elicit emotions, such as nostalgia, which contribute to the overall emotional experience of the space. Ruins makes one think of death, death of the building, death of the past. The concept of memento mori lies in the remembrance of this death. In paintings, this thought has been prevalent. Romanticizing the ruins through realism was a popular painting style. As seen in the painting by Lorraine, it shows the ultimate remembrance of ruins and the past. Contrary to Memento Mori, this is an example of the Watson Hotel in Mumbai, India. This painting was made way before the building was even constructed. It serves as a reminder of what the building once was and what it could have been if it had been maintained and preserved. Ruination as a term reflects the abandoned buildings and structures. Giving life to it would be reincarnating the ruins. Around the world, such projects have been seen and developed, showing the potential in the aged and weathered. In the local context of India, the first thing that strikes one's mind would be the colonial past. Especially seen in South Bombay, the fort area, the Western culture is very prevalent. These buildings were constructed during the British colonial period in India and are characterized by their grand architecture and ornate detailing. In the concept of Orientalism, Western intellectuals and artists have used their knowledge of the Orient to justify and reinforce Western domination over Eastern societies. Now, these spaces have been retaken by the locals, but the architecture style stays. An example for that is the repurposed building in Ballard Estate, Tiana. The exterior of the building is stone, while after the revamp, the interiors were seen to have bricks. They were then kept exposed, and a lot of reclaimed materials and spaces, such as the staircase, was reused to revive the space with a new look. Yet, the question remains, why do we love these age-old buildings, structures, interiors, and architecture? Old buildings serve as living witnesses to past eras and cultural practices, leaving us with a modern nostalgia and providing a tangible connection to the past that may be difficult to find in more modern structures. Buildings are not passive objects, but play an active role in shaping and maintaining societal power relations. In case of old buildings, their perceived cultural value often stems from the historical narratives they represent and the power structures they reflect and reinforce. By embracing the physical decay and weathering of old buildings, people can reclaim a sense of ownership over their cultural heritage and resist the power dynamics that seek to control and commodify this living, breathing museum. A plausible response to this love is a sustainable approach to conservation that preserves the historical and cultural significance of the building while making it relevant to the current needs. The reasons being, by reclaiming these buildings and repurposing them for local use, communities can assert their own cultural identity. They represent an essential chapter in the region's history and are valued for their architectural and cultural significance. By giving a new identity to the built space, by transforming the negative associations of the past into positive ones, preserving the past while adapting it for the current needs, it provides economic benefits by revitalizing neglected areas and creating new opportunities for business and tourism. Also, certain government restrictions and bylaws restrict the demolition or encourage the preservation of structures, making it a necessity to adapt. Using original materials and the material culture and adaptive reuse processes help preserve the authenticity of the building and retain its historical value. Juxtaposition of contrasting materials helps to create a dialogue between the past and the present, highlighting the historical significance of the older materials and innovative potential of the new materials. Through the research, aged and weathered materials contribute to a sense of familiarity, reminiscence, and coherence in the space, creating an emotional response. Using these materials may also contribute to sustainability efforts by promoting the reuse and repurposing of materials. Thank you.
Çok fazla otel, çok az zaman.
Thank you, Sonia, Kinesar, and Professor Ananta. We will move on to the third presentation. Third presentation, presenting a design method that begins with space and ends with building by Asil Youssef Zureygat, Jehan Diab, and Dima Al-Shaheen.
Hello, everyone. My name is Asil Zureygat. I am a part-time lecturer at American University of Madaba in Jordan. And with my students, Jehan Diab, Dima Al-Shaheen, we prepared this paper titled Presenting a Design Method that Begins with Space and Ends with Building. This paper was actually based on a studio I conducted last semester at the university, where students were introduced to the design of space prior to the design, the formulation of a concept, or any, and then moved forward with form and finally building proposal. This sought to move away from architecture as an object or any preoccupation with form into architecture as a spatial phenomena imbued with ideas, meaning, relevance, but most importantly, relevance. So what I mean by relevance is that where the production of space becomes reflective of the social realities existing in a place, so that the building would start to respond to context spatially and experientially. Reading through The Timeless Way of Building by Christopher Alexander, and this idea or this focus on how the life and soul of a place is actually dependent on not on the physical environment, but on the patterns of events which we experience there. So I look to The Timeless Way of Building as a support to my argument, but specifically this idea when Christopher Alexander talks about the quality without a name, that which gives buildings character and makes them alive, as dependent on the existence of these patterns of events. And these patterns of events are understood as common happenings, common practices, activities, specific to a locale. And the design method here seeks to introduce this idea of, if we look outwards to integrate to these patterns of events that happen in a specific place, if we integrate them into the building, then the building would respond to context spatially. Given that the median age range in Jordan is 24 years old, and in Amman it's actually 25 years old, the students were asked to design a youth center that caters for the youth in an area called Jabal Al-Webde, which is one of Amman's oldest neighborhoods. It is well known for its art scene and sidewalk cafes and restaurants, and is known also to be a youth hub. So the design approach asked students to, first of all, conduct a photographic documentation of how the youth interact with the city. What are their activities? What do they like to do? These moments or instances of action. This is what the students were required to do as a way to first analyze how. So to design a building that caters for the youth, it was important to first know what are the activities, and what are the events that actually take place in the city. And this is derived partially from Chumi's event in Chumi's terms as an item in a program or a particular use or a singular function. So the tripartite mode, this is from the Park in the Manhattan transcripts, the tripartite mode of situating a photograph, a space or event, space and movement was adopted as we moved forward, where I asked students to situate the photograph, spatialize the actual action and represent it in a plan, and then finally draw a simple circulation diagram. And this was, so as we can see here in example 1, The Street by Jihan Diab, Jihan took a picture of two individuals taking a picture of each other. One is taking a picture of another against a backdrop of lights. So what Jihan did, she spatialized it or designed a spatial condition that is basically a linear spatial condition with occasional niches for picture taking. And then this is the circulation diagram. This set is one of other 4 sets that constituted the main programs in the youth center building proposal. So this is one of other 4, so for every photograph, she designed a spatial condition and a circulation diagram and an accompanying circulation diagram. And this is an example of one of them, and as we can see in relative to her building proposal, which are 3 volumes that shift off of each other. As we can see here, highlighted in red is the actual The Street, enclosed by the actual volumes. It's all outdoors, so she maintained this outdoor quality and then added this idea of the niches, or added those niches for picture taking against different types of backdrops. Another example is by the mural room by Dima Al-Shaheen, who observed that the youth, a common practice by the youth there is that there are many mural paintings around the city. So she simply designed a space that consists of a series of walls, or a continuous wall that gets painted and repainted repeatedly. And this is the circulation diagram. So this space starts to serve as a space for experimentation, for expression, for mural painting. This set is one of other 4 main programs. But if we see the mural room relative to her building proposal, so those are the 3 volumes submerged in the ground. As we can see here, highlighted in red is the mural room, and we can see it here, the mural room, and this is a visualization that shows how she imagined it after she tweaked it up a little bit, after she worked through the design of the building. So this is really this is the gist of what the paper talks about, this idea of designing space prior to moving into any other step in the design process, and then finally ending with the building proposal. The idea of looking at social practices or spaces becoming reflective of the social practices of a place. Or the idea of the studio thought of spaces becoming reflective of the social practices in a place is a method at contextualizing a building, but also it leaves room for a lot of creative design, in the sense that if we look at if we derive program from actual activities that are present in a specific or patterns of events that happen in a place, then we could come up with a plethora of space types, and we could move away from the standard spaces that are often used in buildings or just plotted in programs, in building programs. And this was really the idea of the design method that the paper presents. Of course, it is. I elaborate much more on it in the paper and support it with further references. But thank you very much.
Thank you. This was the end of our 3rd presentation. Thank you, Asiya Youssef, Jihan Diab, and Dima Al-Shaheen for this unique topic. Then we will move on to the 4th presentation by Fasuhi Olitbenga Steven, Dr. Hurasha Metnia, and Omaya Jova and Ikodasi.
Good day, everyone. I am presenting on a topic titled The Evolution of Medieval Romanesque and Byzantine to Gothic Architecture, recourse to the Darwin's theory. First of all, let me go through the abstract. The study revealed the uncanny relationship in Darwin's theory of evolution and the evolution of medieval architectural forms from the Byzantine through the Romanesque to the Gothic, as can be observed from architectural history. The Byzantine architecture came in time before the Romanesque, and the Romanesque before the Gothic. The Byzantine came just after the classic architecture. And I remember that a major Byzantine architecture was the Hagia Sophia, designed and constructed by Isidorus and of Miletus and Anthemius of Tralles in 313 AD. Then shortly after the death of the Byzantine was the Romanesque, which was a more sturdy architecture. Then following that was the Gothic architecture. And that was how it proceeded in time. So this paper is an attempt to examine the relationships between the three types of architecture I just described and their structural components in time, how it evolved, and the relationships between this evolution spelled out by the theory of evolution. The paper appraised medieval, Byzantine, Romanesque, and Gothic styles and pointed out that major features of the Romanesque are copious in the Gothic, but are inflected in response to the Gothic architecture. You will simply see that they are reminiscent of Romanesque, because there are certain aspects of the Romanesque that are obvious in the Gothic, but this time they have been more developed because of the demands of the era. Then going forward, the study wants to examine the relationship between these structural modifications against the backdrop of the Darwin's theory. The Darwin's theory is a theory that persists that trend in evolution is as a result of the preceding genre adopting some of the qualities and characteristics of its predecessor. And those qualities and characteristics that are adopted or inherited are by a process called beneficial selection. And after it has been selected, it becomes innate part of the predecessor, and that they have been obtained by natural selection. That is just a simple, very simple explanation of the Darwin's theory. And now, how does it relate to this notion, which constitutes the discourse of this discussion? But before going further, I want to contextualize my discussion within literature. The studies of humanistic aspect of architecture, which is what my presentation is about, because I'm relating architecture to the Darwin's theory. In other words, I'm relating stone to flesh. I'm relating architecture to biology. But there have been write-ups about this relationship between human configurations and architecture, stone and flesh, architecture and biology, from history. Indeed, Vitruvius, in his 10 books on architecture, depicts the topic of the body as a representative of humanistic traditions of architecture. And since then, this tradition had been continuously promoted. As can be seen from the slide, the body as a representative of humanistic tradition of architecture. And this is the diagram showing this. Then following this is the medieval architecture. A very strong example of the medieval architecture is the Hagia Sophia. Like I said, it was designed by Anthemius and Isidorus, commissioned by Constantine in 313 AD. This is the building, and this is the dome, with drums underneath. Following this, we have the Romanesque architecture. This is the Romanesque architecture, which follows the Byzantine in time, as can be seen, the vaults, the roofs, and the vault in these characteristics, the Romanesque architecture. The Romance architecture is sturdy and thick, lumpy, and evoke a sense of mass rather than volume, which could be seen. Biologically, this support system resembles a mass of muscles with less developed bony skeletons. And, as can be seen here, this is an example of the Romanesque architecture. You can see the lump, sturdy and lumpy, and evoke a sense of mass rather than tradition, which is beams and columns. And this in a way can be likened to lower animals, such as lower mammals, such as the dolphins. You can see the muscular body system of the Romanesque is very close to that of the amphibian mammals, the dolphin. But this can further be this study goes further to be seen in another perspective. Looking at this is an example of Gothic architecture. You can see that the ribs are much more developed, and which can be likened to the musculoskeletal system of man. Can be likened to the musculoskeletal system of man. So while the Romanesque is likened to the dolphin, while the Romanesque, yes, is likened to the dolphins, the Gothic is likened to the musculoskeletal system of man. And so we can see the development that man, according to the theory of evolution, is much more developed than dolphin. Likewise, the Gothic is much more developed in time than the Romanesque, which brings us to the conclusion that the study attempts at understanding the relationships between the Byzantine, the Romanesque, and the Gothic in time, vis-a-vis the backdrop of the Darwin's theory. So, in conclusion, the study opines that the slender additions lends credence to the feminine qualities of the Gothic, and that the Gothic architecture evolves from the Byzantine and Romanesque, and that the structural forms of the Gothic is an advanced genre of the Romanesque. Lastly, the study explained this natural order of evolution, taking recourse to the Darwin's theory of evolution, and in this way, the study concludes that the Gothic is superior to the Romanesque, and that it is a structural and that the structural components are much more developed. Thank you very much for listening. Good.
Thank you. This was the end of the first presentation. Now we will move on to the last presentation of our session. Reimagining Animal Shelter Design, Fostering Holistic Welfare in Northern Cyprus and Beyond, which will be presented by PhD candidate Anant National.
Hello, welcome to my presentation. My name is Anant National, and today I'm going to present on reimagining animal shelter design, fostering holistic welfare in Northern Cyprus and beyond. I will follow this agenda in my presentation. First of all, I will start with the introduction part. Animal shelters are facilities designed to provide temporary refuge for homeless or abandoned animals. In contemporary societies, these shelters aim to offer a warm, safe haven while ensuring the animals receive proper nutrition and care. In Northern Cyprus, the growing animal population poses significant challenges, making the design and functionality of shelters critical for the welfare of their residents. The significance of this study is that it addresses and examines the evolving problems found in animal shelters in Northern Cyprus. In this study, contribute to improving the welfare standards of animals in the shelter areas, at the same time trying to shed light on the wider societal implications of shelter design and management. The problem of the study is in the inability of existing animal shelters in Northern Cyprus to provide for the various needs of their residents. This problem encompasses spatial quality, animal psychological welfare, and shelter effectiveness in addressing the welfare deficiencies. Purpose of the study is to contribute to creation of more effective and humane shelter environment by identifying design deficiencies and suggestion improvements to existing animal shelters in Northern Cyprus. It also explores and evaluates how to improve the quality of life of animal residents, considering the psychological effects for both animals and humans. The aim of the study is to develop innovative design and strategies for the design and management of existing animal shelters in Northern Cyprus to improve the welfare of animal residents and to further increase positive interactions between humans and animals. Research question in this study: do animal shelters in Northern Cyprus effectively meet the needs of their inhabitants, both in terms of physical design and psychological well-being? It explores how the layout and spatial quality of shelters influence the overall health and happiness of animals. Additionally, it assesses the shelter's ability to provide environments that reduce stress and promote positive behaviors, considering factors such as space, comfort, enrichment, activities, and human-animal interactions. The hypothesis of this study is that improving the design and management of animal shelters in Northern Cyprus to better meet the needs of animal inhabitants and enhance their well-being, there will be a corresponding improvement in human perceptions of animal welfare and increased adoption rates. This study employs a systematic review methodology to evaluate and improve the design and management of animal shelters in Northern Cyprus, focusing on enhancing the welfare of sheltered animals. The steps are as follows. First of all, literature review. A comprehensive review of current literature on animal shelter design, animal behavior, and welfare standard is conducted. This review aims to identify key factors influencing animal welfare in shelter environments and to highlight best practice in shelter design. Second one is development of guidelines. Based on the insights gained from the literature review and data analysis, the study develops a set of architectural and operational guidelines aimed at improving the welfare of animals in northern Cyprus shelters. In Figure 8, we can see the methodology diagram. Each factors are related with each others. Animal welfare and animal behavior is dependent factors in this research. Animal shelter design is independent factors, but all factors are related between each others. The result underscore the importance of considering animal behavior and psychological needs in architectural design, aiming to optimize both animal welfare and human-animal interaction between shelter settings. The study emphasizes the increasing significance of pleasure, health, and life satisfaction in architectural design. According to the factors, in Figure 9, the table shows that tight relationship between animal well-being, animal shelter design, animal behavior, and architectural welfare. We can see that all factors are related with each others. According to these factors, the guide we have made in this direction will be an invaluable tool that can be utilized in all shelters that are developing or that need to be developed. In guidelines for shelter design and management, we use nutrition, physical environment, health, behavioral interaction, mental state, facility design, sound control, behavioral assessment, drop boxes, and environmental sustainability. According to this guideline, which has been developed based on the research conducted, will be applied to shelters will be in the form of points. For each category, 1 point is given for each yes or no answer. If a shelter scores 10 points in all categories, it will be considered as a shelter that has achieved the highest welfare standards. Shelters that score 3 or 4 in the answer to this guide are those that have significant deficiencies and are in urgent need of improvement. If shelter scoring 6 or 7 points have identified areas for improvement but generally have normal welfare conditions. Shelters scoring 0 points are in serious breach of animal welfare standards and require immediate interventions. As a result of the study, we have developed a guideline aimed to improving the design of animal shelters and addressing the welfare needs of animals. This guideline is based on a literature review and will be applied to all shelters in northern Cyprus to assess the improvements needed in shelter framework and manage animal behavior and welfare. Due to the limited time available in this research, only a guideline with principles and a rating system has been produced. These guidelines serves a valuable template for designers who wish to raise the criteria for shelter design to a higher standard and thus provide optimal welfare conditions for animals in the shelter environment in northern Cyprus. These are my references. Thank you for your listen.
Thank you, Ladan Tarhun, for this valuable research. I think now we can start the questions and answer discussion sessions. Any questions from the audience? Or any comments, any suggestions for this unique studies?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Hello, Mohammed.
Yes, hello. Just I have thanks for everyone about this valuable presentations. My question is for the last presentation, Ms. Laden Hoja, about like the does the societal element or how the societal element influencing the the research topic, or what is the societal role in this research? This is the first question. The second one is, what about the shelter? Can we find not another place, but what about the shelters in general as a concept for the animals? These two questions just I have. And thanks for everyone again.
Hello, everyone. For the first question is societal elements. It's like the elements needs to be positively related with the shelter design. And for your second question, you asked that positively, sorry, can you repeat the questions again for the second one?
Excuse me, I lost the connection. For the second question is about the shelter. What about the concept of a shelter?
The concept is the shelter concept is different because every the city and every the area has a different design about the concept. It's related with the guidelines because we need to support their health, their behavior, and these all things all related with their welfare in the shelter environment. So we are not going to talk about the concept, we are going to talk about the design criteria in the environment of the shelters.
Okay, thank you so much, Hocam. Thank you.
Maybe I can continue with the animal shelter presentation. You also, since you're creating this guideline for the well-being of the animals, right? You also mentioned about this psychological well-being of the animals. So what specific methods are you using to assess the well-being of these animals?
The observation going to be will be in this case studies because every animals needs to be stay in their environment. We need to take the observation. For example, their nutrition. They need to get their meals. They need to access their water, and it is also related. It's also affect their behaviors. The bed timing, sleeping timing, and it needs to be really observation. And I need to separate the whole animals in a minimum cage dimensions, and according to that, we will take the considerations.
Yeah, I see. So you're somehow doing a behavioral mapping on the animals, I guess.
Yes, because everything in the shelter environments affect their behavior. For example, when you enter the shelters, all animals start to bark. They don't have any noise controller or another things. They need to be separated. Each of them getting very serious behaviors. For example, when they saw the people, because maybe before that, some of the people attack them. Because of them, they are acting differently. So we need to make an observation in the shelter environment.
Yeah, since also I'm from Cyprus, I know the challenging conditions of these shelters also. What is the worst part that you have observed? What is the most difficult part that you have seen so far during your observations? I know that you mentioned about the limited time, but what is the most challenging conditions that we are facing with these shelters in northern Cyprus?
Sorry, we couldn't get the question because the internet interrupted. Can you repeat it, please?
Yes, of course. Since I am also Cypriot, I know this situation with the shelters also. And you also mentioned about the limited time that you couldn't finalize the research yet. I know PhD is a long journey, but what is the most challenging conditions that you have observed in these shelters?
There is a lots of condition. For example, in northern Cyprus, every city has a animal shelters, but in these shelters, for example, 10 puppies or 10 dogs are living in the same cage. When you put the food, they are attacking the food. They don't get any, how can I say, they are not, yes, they are sufficient for everything, just water, food. They are trying to sleep, but they don't have any space to sleep because the 20 or 10 puppies and other dogs are living in the same environment. And they don't have any air ventilation system. They don't have any, how can I say, for example, in summer times, we have it's too much 40, 45 degrees in summer, and they don't have any cover in their shared environment. So there is a lot of factors.
Yeah, a lot of problems. Hopefully authorities will follow the guidelines that you will generate with your creation.
That's why I choose this topic, because I am in very loving situation, this kind of animals, cats, dogs, and I am trying. I hope that at the end of my PhD, if I finish this thesis, I will try to get any support and any money from the another governments, and I want to develop a really welfare animal standard shelters in northern Cyprus.
Yeah, thank you for this valuable research. Do we have the presenters from presentation to a critical inquiry of material aging? Soumya Kemesara or Professor Amol Shah?
Yes, we are here. Yes.
Hello.
Hi. Yes.
Research is very unique also. You examined the strategy of aging and the weathering of these materials for the adaptive reuse of the spaces. And you also mentioned about the psychological part of it, like evoking a sense of nostalgia, etc. So I'm wondering, how did you assess these emotional experience of these spaces? And also, second question, how these aged materials are enhancing the emotional well-being of the occupants? What was the method to assess this?
Okay, so Soumya, I think, is not there available, so I'll answer. Soumya, are you there? Okay, I'll answer. So the first question about the measurement part, so it was a qualitative evaluation. This was done through a live case study. So Soumya, actually, she was my student. She actually went to the place. She looked at, she interviewed people there. She also talked to the designer, the person who actually designed the spaces. And those observations, it was that we did not mention that in the presentation, but we have all the data with us. So that is there. And what was your second question? Sorry.
How these aged materials are enhancing the well-being of the
So this initially we were, and when we started doing the research, we were always under the impression that, people wanted to get rid of old materials, especially in adaptive reuse buildings, or they wanted to cover it up, because we saw a lot of haphazard or, very casual attempts at adaptive reuse where they hide the old surfaces, at interior architecture level. But then when we actually saw in Mumbai what was happening, that all the old British era textile mills, which were not in a very pleasant condition, they were hardly occupiable in some cases. They would, if you were to apply building codes and standards of safety, you would not even want to walk in there. But yet, through structural intervention, through architectural intervention, they made it preservable, at one level, and at an interior level, they made it occupiable. So what they did was they preserved what they could preserve, at least structurally, architecturally. And then what they did was, whatever new materials that had to be brought in was always put in the sort of a combination of what could work with the old material. So there are lots of there is one area called Lower Parel in Mumbai. Those from Mumbai would know quite well. That entire area is filled with lots of old textile mills, and now they have been adapted into bars, pubs, restaurants, even offices, shopping centers, and so on. So because Mumbai has shortage of space, being an island city. So through government policy, government sort of force this kind of adaptive reuse, and now people are also able to understand that if you preserve this industrial heritage, then it adds value. So that there are multiple layers to this value creation. One is that there is modern industrial heritage that one looks at. There is material culture that one looks at. That all these buildings came up, during the 19th century, mid 19th century, early 20th century. So how do you preserve that industrial heritage, all that? And then there is cultural connotation that it sort of defined the identity of city of Mumbai for a long time. Before it became city of skyscrapers and city of slums and all that. So there was a sort of a period of at least 50, 60 years where it became synonymous with the city for its textile manufacturing. So there are multiple such layers which now, people are starting to realize, and that is what they want to preserve wherever they can. Not all of it is possible. Like one example she was talking about called Watson Hotel. Now, unfortunately, it's in a very bad state, but that is a prime example of what the architecture at that time sort of represented of, building materials like cast iron, exposed bricks, ceilings, and, so on, something that we typically associate with prefab, pre-engineered architecture of 19th century. So that is there are multiple layers. And this is something that we found by interviewing the design teams behind such projects. So that is the main, focus. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Do we have questions or comments from the audience? Still, we have like 15 more minutes, so we can continue our discussions. Any comments or suggestions? Okay, maybe I can continue. Do we have presenters from presentation 3, Asil Youssef?
Yes, hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for unique research again. You told us about this design approach by working out the human actions, the social practices, etc., and propose a kind of a design method. I'm wondering how your approach is different from these traditional design methods. What is unique about on your method that you are proposing?
Yes, so the method, so the thing, so the traditional approach that that is usually at least taught at the university or anywhere else is that they start with a concept that relates to the social. It could relate to some given typologies. They could be extracted from the site. So basically a concept that has to do with form, that informs the actual form of the building, that usually relates directly to form, as opposed to it being influencing the actual types of spaces. So the design approach really focuses on the program, on actually starting to rethink this program, to let the program be informed by what's happening in the city. And this is what's, and the idea is that to start with articulating the program by looking at social practices, by looking at activities, by looking at human action, and rethinking that to actually to then design a space prior to begin even thinking of form, before even thinking of what the building will look like. And because this is a studio, it was important to do that. Because it was important to not start with what will the building look like, because this is usually what students are usually preoccupied with. Oh, what will the building look like? So it was like, no, what will the building have? What will the programs be? How will the programs be context sensitive or context specific? So it's this idea of deriving program from human action or from activity, from human activity. And it was I thought this also, it was so important because there's a lot that can happen when you look at human activity. There's a lot that you can start to tweak things. You can start to be creative with, like for example, let's say people eating by the sidewalk. How can you, it's a simple thing, it's a simple observation, but how can you take that and spatialize it, make it integrated into the building. So it's something, so you maintain this outdoor quality, but you put it in a circulation route. So it maintains this condition of eating by a circulation route. And it's just looking at those fundamental things that make up the experience of eating by the sidewalk, for example, and integrating it into the building so it becomes spatialized, it becomes part of the building. And this is the simple approach that I thought would be important for, especially in a studio environment. Only because a lot of focus has been going on what it will look like, and what the building will look like, and instead of how would it be experienced and what it will be like on the inside. And actually, and that's I think that's probably maybe the fundamental difference. Perhaps that could be an answer to your question. I'm not sure.
Yeah, you answered. Thank you. I think it's the same strategy that we deal with within the design of the interiors as well. You are, I think, educating in the architecture department, right?
Yes.
Yes. So as the interior architects, while we teach, we start with the same ideology. We start with the human, the behavioral maps, the activities, the experiences of the spaces. We don't deal with the end product of the building itself, the way it will visualize at the end. And I think you have the same startup point, not dealing with the end product, but starting with the very small, that minor experience of the human being, I guess, right?
Exactly. It's a fundamental like it's just this simple difference that actually makes really influences the whole process, for students and for whoever's taking the studio for
Thank you
Yeah,
for this great
welcome.
study. Any comments or suggestions?
I like to share my thoughts with the presenters. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So the previous presenter, she talked about design principles and other things in the studio environment, right? So I think there's some actually design process is not always universal one, right? It's very contextual and subjective, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, it differs from function to function. It means when you are asked to design a residence, that is one context. When you are asked to design a hospital, that is different context. When you are asked to design a tall building, that is totally different scenario, right? Some involves a lot of technology, some involves a lot of social norms, some involves a lot of functionality. I already told you 3 examples. First one involves a lot of social norms. Second one involves a lot of functions where emotion doesn't count because you need to save someone's life, right? In hospital, I mean. And the third one, it involves a lot of technology, which doesn't know about the society much because you are living on a high. You hardly relate with the society, right? Because you are living on a very high and you are controlling the whole premises and you can be looked from apart or very far from them. So you include a very large amount of space or society, like Ziggurat, you can see from far away, right? So I think the presenter said something about in the social, it means studio norms and other things. I think it should be, it means reconnected with the functionalities, number one. Second, the contextuality, number two, and the person, it means the personal requirement of the client or the society as well. That's my comment.
Thank you. Dear Asir, would you like to add something to that?
Yes, I because when you mentioned hospital, this really kind of made me think that perhaps this approach would be a little problematic if it was a bit for a hospital, but it would still apply, I think, if we just think of the spaces first. And but I think there also could the whole dialogue of the organization of spaces that could also be part of, like, it's not just about the actual space, but it's also about the organization of spaces. But you could also still look at how people in a place interact, how people in a city or how people in society interact with everything around them, and that would still influence the functionality. So even in a hospital, I'm just thinking that even in a hospital, even though it's a highly functional, and there's also laws and codes and guidelines, that influence the design of a space and everything, I could still see that that this method could still be applicable if you just think of maybe not the actual space, but also the organization of spaces, maybe how just the customs, the traditions, how people interact with everything around them, how you organize the space, where you put where do people move between for example, not the dorms, but like the housing, how important is privacy for example, a specific culture versus another culture. So I still think I don't know if I got you right, Shahryar. So yeah, but I'm just thinking that maybe I did not touch on those different other aspects. But I think yes, it was in the context of a youth center, perhaps it was the most direct way to look at activities, and it was perhaps there was more freedom in that, I would say. Because it's a youth center as opposed to a hospital, there will be less freedom. I'm not sure if I got that right, but I just thought I'd share what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Asir. Of course, if it's a hospital design, it has particular unique regulations that you have to follow. It totally depends on the function of the space. But I think still it is an applicable approach for every project, unless you meet with the needs of the occupants and unless you follow the particular codes and regulations that are necessary in that cases. Thank you. Any more comments or suggestions from the audience? We have 3 more minutes. So if you would like to add something, do we have anybody from the presentation 4? Fasi Olik Benga, Dr. Hura Shahmetnia. I think nobody is here from presentation 4.
Can I make another question, please?
Yes, go for it, please.
Yeah, it is about the critical inquiry of material aging in interior architecture. My question is, how should we decide on what should be conserved, what not to be conserved? That's my question.
That would be very difficult to generalize. But one thing that we realize is that what people value the most. So generally, the research that we did, ultimately, we want to make it as part of a design process, that there is a design thinking, strategizing involved in what to retain and what not to retain. One of the criteria that we saw across the studies that we did was about structural and architectural stability as a primary. So human occupancy of a space takes a primary, criteria for preservation or retention. Everything else can come later. So I think that is one. Then once that is taken care of, then, it's really sort of an open canvas on what kind of a experience or a narrative you want to create in the space, whether you want to highlight, not highlight, etc. Soumya, you want to have a crack at this?
Yeah, I want to add that as he mentioned earlier about the Watson Hotel, that was also sort of tried to be conserved, but when that happened, there was a casualty that sort of happened because of that. So due to all these factors, there are the government guidelines which are supposed to be followed to conserve whatever old material can be actually used as a structure or a material in the building.
So in just to add to the in the city, at least in Mumbai, there are very strict guidelines regarding old building occupancy and bylaws. So one has to really, stick to the government policy first and foremost, because they are taking care of the human occupation part. Then the experiential part comes. So ultimately, all of these decisions are governed at some level by practicality more than anything. But once that is out of the way, then really it opens up a lot of possibilities for designers to explore, and that is being explored right now all across India. So Mumbai has become sort of a benchmark, and then everyone is sort of copy pasting those policies all across the country.
Okay, thank you, Professor Amos Shah. Thank you, everybody, for this great, valuable presentation, comments, and questions. I think we are done with our session, and the next session.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Elise. Thank you for the sharing this.